so today we are looking at the theories, and we are saying that they provide a framework for thinking about human growth, development, and learning. And there, we want to pose a question and ask ourselves, but why do we study development? What can we learn from psychological theories of development? Are there anything that we will get from it and that we need to brainstorm about? So before we do that, I want to introduce to us the types of theories. We have developmental theories. And if you've ever wondered about what motivates human thoughts and behavior, understanding these theories can provide useful insights into individuals and society. So we need to know that in order to understand human beings, we need to look at these theories, and the theories that are there. The types of theories, we have developmental theories. Developmental theories provide a set of guiding principles and concepts that describe and explain human development. These these are a set of guiding principles that are there and which describe human development. Some developmental theories focus on the formation of a specific quality, such as Kohlberg's theory of moral development. Other developmental theories focuses on growth that happens throughout the lifespan, such as Erikson theory. There is the Erikson theory of development. Then we have grand theories, and grand theories are those comprehensive ideas often proposed by major thinkers such as Sigmund Freud, Erikson, and Jean Piaget. These are theories or those comprehensive ideas often proposed by major thinkers. They are those who sat down, we call them today the fathers of psychology, but they were people who we describe as major thinkers who came up with comprehensive ideas that they proposed. And we have said Sigmund Freud, Erikson, and Jean Piaget came up, or they described or came up with these theories. Then we have mini theories. Mini theories describe a small, very specific aspects of development. This is just a dot of development, but very specific to the core and the things that now this is like it's streamlined down into an individual. A mini theory must explain fairly narrow behaviors such as how self-esteem is formed or early childhood socialization. These theories are often rooted in the ideas established by grand theories, but they do not seek to describe and explain the world of human behavior. These theories often draw on research and ideas from many different disciplines, but are not yet as broad or far-reaching as grand theories. The socio-cultural theory proposed by theorist Lev Vygotsky Lev Vygotsky is a good example of an emergency theory of development. This is what he said. Just a bit. So we see that theories create a basis for future research, as we said, and we we say that the theories are. Let me just say that, as we have said about emergency theory, we talked of many theories. That these are theories are often rooted in the ideas established by grand theories, but they do not seek to describe and explain the whole of human behavior and growth. So let's look at types of theories. We say there's emergency theories, and these emergency theories are those that have been created fairly recently and are often formed by systematically combining various mini theories. We have said that there are mini theories, and many theories are those that describe an individual. And now the emergency theories are those theories that are often formed by systematically combining various mini theories. These theories often draw on research and ideas from many different disciplines, but are not yet as broad or far-reaching as grand theories. They are those theories often drawn on research and ideas from many different disciplines. This is where different people come up with different ideas, and these different ideas are just combination. They are combined here and there, and they are put together. The sociocultural theory proposed by theorist Lev Trotsky is a good example of an emergency theory of development. And what is the purpose of psychology theories? What are the purposes of psychology theories? Theories provide a framework for understanding human behaviors, the thoughts, and development. By having a broad base of understanding about the hows and whys of human behavior, we can better understand ourselves and others. So that's the major one of the reasons that it provides a framework for understanding the human behaviors, the thoughts, and development. Theories create a basis for future research. When they come with a theory, these theories are liable to be refuted, to be corrected, to be debated upon, and therefore they create a basis for future research. Researchers use theories to form hypotheses that can be tested. Theories are dynamic and always changing. Theories are not static. They are not all. It is not. We cannot say that once someone has come up with a theory, it becomes final. It can change. It's always changing. As new discoveries are made, theories are modified and adapted to account for new information. Let's look at theoretical perspectives. And we want to say that theories are explanations and predictions. Theories are explanations and predictions that provide a framework for understanding relationships. They are explanations and predictions that provide a framework for understanding relationships. We'll consider 5 major theoretical perspectives used in lifespan development. We have psychodynamic, behavioral, cognitive, humanistic, evolutionary. Psychodynamic, behavioral, cognitive, humanistic, evolutionary. The psychodynamic perspective by Freud and Erikson. Most closely associated with Freud. Freud's, that's 1856 to 1839, psychoanalytic theory suggests that conscious forces act to determine personality and behavior. Conscious forces act to determine personality and behavior. Based on the view that behavior is motivated by unconscious or inner forces, or memories and conflicts over which a person has little control or awareness, that's what came up with our man here, Freud Erikson. And allow me to widen this slide view. at this psychoanalytic theory. Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory of personality argues that human behavior is the result of the interactions among three component parts of the mind: the id, the ego, and the superego. And this theory, known as Freud's structural theory of personality, places great emphasis on the role of unconscious psychological conflicts in shaping behavior and personality. Dynamic interactions among the fundamental parts of the mind are thought to progress through five distinct psychosexual stages of development. So, and over this century, they came up with this: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is the most the id is the most primitive of the three structures and is concerned with instant gratification of basic physical needs and urges. So the id is the here and now and is the most primitive of the three structures. This also this structure is concerned with instant gratification of basic physical needs. When you feel hungry, it comes immediately that I am hungry and it is here and now. There is no debate for that. There is no time to waste for that. It is just I am hungry and I need food. The ego, in contrast, the instructional id and the moral superego, the superego is concerned with social rules and morals. This is when you feel like eating, you are hungry, but your body, the id says that I am hungry. The superego tells you it is not time to eat, or wait a little bit, or we have not yet cooked, or food is in the kitchen. So the superego is concerned with social rules. You may feel like you want to pee now, but the superego tells you, no, this is not the right place. Look around, go and hide somewhere, or look to try to find a washroom where it is. So the superego is so much concerned about the moral rules, the standards that are there, similar to what many people call their conscience or their moral compass. It develops as a child learns what their culture considers right and wrong. Then we have the ego. In contrast to the structural id and the moral superego, the ego is the rational, the pragmatic part of our personality. The ego is the one that guides you, is the one that makes you now to think that I am a man, and as a man, when I want to go and pee, I need to stand. If I am a woman and I want to go there, I don't stand, I sit down. It is less primitive than the id and is partly conscious and partly unconscious. It's what Freud considered to be the self, and its job is to balance the demands of id and superego in the practical context of reality. So if you walked past the strangers with ice cream one more time, your ego will mediate the conflict between your id, that is, I want that ice cream right now, and superego. It's wrong to take someone else's ice cream and decide to go buy your own ice cream. So the ego is the conscious part. It's partial conscious and partial unconscious. It is that part of you ile ambaye inakuambia ya kwamba yes, you need to do this, but there is a way to do it and do the right thing. It is the moral part of you, or it controls the moral part of you. While this may mean you have to wait 10 more minutes, which will frustrate your ego decides to make that sacrifice as part of the compromise, satisfying your desire for ice cream while also avoiding an unpleasant social situation and potential feeling of shame. So Freud's stages of psychosexual development. What is psychosexual development? Proposed by the famous psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud, the theory of psychosexual development describes how personality develops during childhood. While the theory is well known in psychology, it is also one of the most controversial theories. Freud believed that personality develops through a series of childhood stages in which the pleasure-seeking energies of the id become focused on certain erogenous areas. So this psychosexual energy or libido was described as the driving force behind behavior. Psychoanalytic theory suggests that personality is mostly established by the age of 5. So it is believed here, or it is suggested that personality is mostly established when a person is age 5. By age 5, the personality is fully developed. Early experiences play a large role in personality development and continue to influence behavior later in life. If these psychosexual stages are completed successfully, the result is a healthy personality. If certain issues are not resolved at the appropriate stage, fixation can occur. So here we are saying that if the stages are completed successfully, the result is healthy personality. And if the stages are not resolved at the appropriate stage, then if certain issues are not resolved at the appropriate stage, then fixation can occur. Fixation is that lack, that deprivation of something that is supposed to have been done, and that stage is is superseded. It's not done at the right time. A fixation is a persistent focus on an earlier psychosexual stage. It is like when a child fails to do certain things when they were young, and when they grow up, they find themselves that they want to go back and do the things that they did not do. So it's like they want to compensate that stage which was not uh, done. So it's called fixation. For example, a person who is fixated at the oral stage may be overdependent on others and may seek oral stimulation through smoking, drinking, or eating. So let's look at these stages. We have the oral stage. This is the age range of the oral stage is birth to 1 year, and the erogenous zone here is the mouth. During the oral stage, the infant's primary source of interaction occurs through the mouth. So the rooting and sucking reflex is especially important. The mouth is vital for eating, and the infant derives pleasure from oral stimulation through gratifying activities such as tasting and sucking. So when the child is there at 1 year old, the child thinks only with the mouth. Everything that the child does is the mouth. If you bring a hand there, you want the mouth to enter, the hand to enter into the mouth with the fingers. Because the infant is entirely dependent upon caretakers who are responsible for feeding the child, the infant also develops a sense of trust and comfort through this oral stimulation. So here, the child develops trust to the person who feeds him or who feeds it at that particular time, who is the caretaker. The primary conflict at this stage is the weaning process. The child must become less dependent upon caretakers. So when it comes to weaning, when you want now to introduce food to the child now becomes less dependent on the caretakers, and this is the greatest challenge now at this stage. If fixations occurs at this stage, Freud believed the individual will have issues with dependency or aggression. Oral fixation can result in problems with drinking, eating, smoking, or nail biting. When you find a child is biting the fingers, it's because there is that stage which they hawakumaliza. Mtoto akinyang'anywa kunyonya mapema ana develop issues kama ya kunyonya vidole, kama ya kunyonya mdomo, kama ya wakikuwa wakubwa ndio wanakuja kukuwa walevi wa kuvuta sigara na kunywa pombe, kwa sababu kuna stage ambayo ilipitwa. Then we have the anal stage. This age range is between 1 to 3 years, and the erogenous zone is the bowel and bladder control. During the anal stage, Freud believed that the primary focus of the libido was on controlling bladder and bowel movements. The major conflict at this stage is toilet training. This is when a child feels like going to the toilet, and you find that the child anasikia tu kwenda toilet, anajiachilia na anashtuka ni nini amefanya. Na wakati huu kama hii stage haitashughulikiwa vizuri, huyu mtoto akikosa kujua control the bladder, atakuwa na pupuu kila mahali anaenda, hata kwa kanisa, kila mahali huko nje, popote. Lakini hii stage inafaa, kulingana na Freud, ni mahali ambapo sasa mtoto anaanza control the bladder. The major conflict at this stage is toilet training. The child has to learn to control his or her bodily needs. Developing this control leads to a sense of accomplishment and independence. According to Freud, success at this stage is dependent upon the way in which parents approach toilet training. So at this stage is when the parent introduces a potty and puts there and tells the child that you are supposed to poo or to go on your calls here. So this is where a child anafunzwa alafu anaweza kufurahia. Parents who utilize praise and rewards for using the toilet at the appropriate time encourage positive outcomes and help children feel capable and productive. So this stage is where now you introduce the rewards. You bring a toilet, a potty there, you put the child there. When they go, when they pee or they poop there in that potty, you reward that child. You can reward by a clap, by congratulating the child, and then next time when they feel like going, they bring the potty and they poop, and they expect you to do the same, the needful, that is congratulating. Freud believed that positive experiences during this stage served as the basis for people to become competent, productive, and creative adults. So the success of this stage is what makes people to be competent when they grow up. Wanafanya kitu kwa sababu wanajua kuna reward. They become productive because they know there is a reward, either of praise or an increment. And they become creative. They become creative because when they do something and people affirm them, they do more and more. However, not all parents provide the support and encouragement that children need during this stage. Some parents instead punish, ridicule, or shame a child for accidents. When a child fails to poop on the pot, instead of the parent encouraging this child, they beat the child, that is punishment, ama wanamwashame before the people, and the child, the ego, ile ego yake inavunjwa, inaumia, and then the child anaanza kudevelop the child becomes now, maybe when they grow up, anaanza kuwa mtu ambaye the self esteem is lowered. According to Freud, inappropriate parental responses can result in negative outcomes. If parents take an approach that is too lenient, Freud suggests that an anal expulsive personality could develop, in which the individual has a messy, wasteful, or destructive personality. So mtoto asipo, kama wazazi hawata approach hii njia kwa vile inavyostahili, if they will not approach or take an approach that is too lenient, Freud, he said that kuna condition ambayo inaitwa anal expulsive personality, which could develop, in which the individual has a messy, wasteful, or destructive personality. If parents are too strict or begin toilet training too early, Freud believed that an anal retentive personality develops, in which the individual is stringent, orderly, rigid, and obsessive. So if the parent becomes too lenient, there is a condition called anal expulsive personality, in which an individual has a messy, wasteful, or destructive personality. And on the contrary, if the parent is so strict, then the anal retentive personality develops, in which the individual is very stringent, is very orderly, and very obsessive. They don't want to do anything wrong because of the punishment. So when they feel like doing something, they want to do it to perfection. Then there is the next stage, which is the phallic stage, which range between 3 to 6 years. And the erogenous zone here is the genitals. During the phallic stage, the primary focus of the libido is on the genitals. At this stage, children also begin to discover the difference between males and females. This is where now a child begins to understand that I am a father, and as a man or as a boy, there are things that are for men, there are things that are for girls. And this is where you now find the children now categorizing or grouping themselves according to their gender. This is where, when they were introduced as a man, they now believe, or they now become to behave like so. So Freud also believed that boys begin to view their fathers as a rival for the mother's affections. Remember that every child, when they are growing up, they find the first person, who is the mother, who gratifies him or her every time they feel like having. You remember we talked of the anal stage, where they want everything to go into where the caretaker, who is the mother, is helping this child, and they develop a strong attachment because this is the person who is there every time. And when the child comes and believes that and realize that the father is also here with the mom, and now he realized that is the boy, now there comes a rival between the child and the mother's affections. And this comes about, or brings about, a condition called the Oedipus complex. Oedipus complex is that reaction where the child is so much attracted, the boy child is so much attracted to the mother, and this brings that complex, which describes these feelings of wanting to possess the mother and the desire to replace the father. However, the child also fears that he will be punished by the father for these feelings. As Freud A fear Freud termed castration anxiety, or the castration syndrome, will come over. The term electoral complex has been used to describe a similar set of feelings expressed by young girls, in which you find that the girl is so much attracted to the father, and they think, or according to their subconscious mind, they see that the mother is competing for the love of the father, and therefore they have that urge of how to eliminate the mother so that they remain with the father. This condition called electoral complex. Freud, however, believed that girls instead experience penis envy. They feel that there is something that is missing. They can even hata wengine wanaanza kukemea mama yao, yani they see like their mother denied them to have that penis, na wanafikiria kwamba ni mama alikusudia. So wanafika mahali they regret why they were not born a man. Eventually, the child begins to identify with the same-sex parent as a means of vicariously possessing the other parent. For girls, however, Freud believed that the penis envy was never fully resolved, and that all women remain somewhat fixated on this stage. So, for class discussion, is this statement true? Is it true what Freud believed? Psychologists such as Karen Horney disputed this theory, calling it both inaccurate and demeaning to women. Instead, Horney proposed that men experience feelings of inferiority because they cannot give birth to children. Again, for class discussion, is this true? Does men experience feelings of inferiority because they cannot give birth. We say that these theories can be refuted. Then this leads us to the latent period, which ranges between 6 years to puberty. And the erogenous zone here is the sexual feelings are inactive. During the latent period, the libido interacts are suppressed. The libido interests are suppressed. The development of the ego and superego contribute to this period of calm. The stage begins around the time that children enter into school and become more content with peer relationships, hobbies, and other interests. The latent period is a time of exploration in which the sexual energy is still present, but it is directed into other areas such as intellectual pursuits and social interactions. This stage is important in the development of social and communication skills and self-confidence. This is a stage where a child now learns how to socialize with others, and the child is so active in that they want to socialize with the children of the same ages, they want to interact with adults, they have now understand the environment, and they have known that they have a feet and they can walk, and they want to walk, and they want to go where other children are. And there are those parents whom, when they are bringing up their children, when raising up their children, wakifika kwa hii age wanafungia mtoto, hawataki mtoto acheze na wengine, hawataki mtoto aende kwa wengine. So huyu mtoto anakuwa antisocial. Wakati ana grow up na anaenda mahali kuna watoto wengine, they develop a wild social behavior in that akikuwa na watoto wengine, unaona mtoto huyu anagonga wengine, ananyang'anya watoto wengine vitu vyao, anataka kuwauma na anafeel kwamba kila kitu ni chake. Na mzazi akikosa kuwa careful katika this stage, ndio wakati ambapo mtoto akililia kila kitu anapewa, akienda hata ugenini anaibisha wazazi, because they see everything and they cry for it and they feel like they want to own it. So now let's go to the next stage, which is the genital stage, and age range is puberty to death. The erogenous zone here is maturing sexual interest. During the final stage of psychosexual development, the individual develops a strong sexual interest in the opposite sex. This stage begins during puberty but lasts throughout the rest of a person's life. This is where a person now realizes that I am a man or I am a girl. I have something that is different from that other person. And this stage is where they now become active. The feelings are now growing and they are very active, and they want to experiment everything in themselves, and they want to feel what it feels, what it means to be in the other parts area in interaction. And in this side, this is where now you feel, or a person now feels attracted to the opposite sex. Where in earlier stages, the focus was solely on individual needs, interest in the welfare of others growing during this stage. If the other stages have been completed successfully, the individual should now be well balanced, warm, and caring. The goal of this stage is to establish a balance between the various life areas. Let's now evaluate or look at the evaluating of Freud's psychosexual state theory. The theory is focused almost entirely on male development, with little mention of female psychosexual development. His theories are difficult to test scientifically. Concepts such as the libido are impossible to measure and therefore cannot be tested. The research that has been conducted tends to discredit Freud's theory. We say that the theories that we come up with, they are theories that can be tested. We say that they can be refuted, they can be tested, they can be debated upon, and when it is proven scientifically, then it can be used. Future predictions are too vague. How can we know that a current behavior was caused specifically by a childhood experience? The length of time between the cause and the effect is too long to assume that there is a relationship between the two variables. Freud's theory is based upon case studies and not empirical research. Also, Freud based his theory on the recollections of his adult patients, not on actual observation and study of children. Let's look at Erickson's theory of psychosocial development. And we may begin by asking ourselves a question: what is psychosocial development? Erik Erickson's theory of psychosocial development is one of the best known theories of personality in psychology. Much like Sigmund Freud, Erickson believed that personality develops in a series of stages. Unlike Freud's theory of psychosexual stages, Erickson's theory described the impact of social experience across the whole lifespan. One of the main elements of Erickson's psychosocial stage theory is the development of ego identity. Ego identity is the conscious sense of self that we develop through social interactions. According to Erickson, is that identity is the conscious sense of self that we develop through social interactions. According to Erickson, our ego identity is constantly changing due to new experiences and information we acquire in our daily interactions with others. In addition to ego identity, Erickson also believed that a sense of competence motivates behaviors and actions. Each stage in Erickson's theory is concerned with becoming competent in an area of life. If the stage is handled well, the person will feel a sense of mastery, which is sometimes referred to as ego strength or ego quality. If the stage is managed poorly, the person will emerge with a sense of inadequacy. In each stage, Erickson believed people experience a conflict that serves as a turning point in development. In Erickson's view, these conflicts are centered on either developing a psychological quality or failing to develop that quality. During these times, the potential for personal growth is high, but so is the potential for failure. So according to him, conflicts are centered on either developing a psychological quality or failing to develop that quality. That is now according to Erickson. Let's look at the strength of Erickson's theory. One of the strengths of psychosocial theory is that it provides a broad framework from which to view development throughout the entire lifespan. Now, according to Erickson, we are saying that is a man or a person who came up with a theory, and this theory was being conducted throughout the stages. Unlike the Sigmund Freud, who only came up with a theory after observing adults, and he assumed that when this person was growing up, there are things that either it was overly done or it was underdone, and therefore he comes up with a theory that has not been proven. But Erickson went all through the stages in proving the theory. So it also allows us to emphasize the social nature of human beings and the important influence that social relationships have on development. Researchers have found evidence supporting Erickson's ideas about identity and have further identified different substages of identity formation. Some researchers also suggest that people who form strong personal identities during adolescence are better capable of forming intimate relationships during early adulthood. So according to this theory, is that people who form strong personal identities during adolescence are better capable of forming intimate relationships. When you find relationships are not going on well, ukipata mtu ambaye anaingia katika uhusiano, anatoka, anaingia kwa uhusiano zingine, wanakosana, wanatoka, ni kwa sababu walipokuwa wanakuwa hakuform that strong personal identities wakati alipokuwa pale adolescent. Na ukipata mtu ambaye kwa pale akiwa adolescent aliweza kuinteract na wengine vizuri na akafeel good during that time, this person inakuwa rahisi sana kumaintain relationships. Na kuna watu tuseme, for example, mtoto amezaliwa na shida fulani, pengine mtoto haoni ama ni ako na ulemavu fulani, alafu wazazi wanafungia ule mtoto asiinteract na wengine kwa sababu ya kuona aibu. Yule mtoto anapokuwa anakuwa na issues with relationships. Now there are limitations of psychosocial theory. What kinds of experiences are necessary to successfully complete each stage? How does a person move from one stage to the next? One major weakness of psychosocial theory is that the exact mechanisms for resolving conflicts and moving from one stage to the next are not well described or developed. Yani, your transition, that transition is not well elaborate on how one transits from this stage to the other, or during that time, that period of transition, there are certain mechanisms here in the thin line that is not being described. So the theory fails to detail exactly what type of experiences are necessary at each stage in order to successfully resolve the conflicts and move to the next stage. So there is the early childhood, where the autonomy versus shame and doubt, which develops there. Then the preschool, we have the initiative versus guilt, where one initiates and when they fail to get what the desired attention, there comes a guilt on it. Then the school age is the industry versus inferiority. Then adolescence is the identity versus role confusion. Young adult, we have intimacy versus isolation. Middle adulthood, generativity versus stagnation. Then the maturity is the ego or ego integrity versus despair. So in the early stages, it begins from infancy, early childhood. Infancy is trust versus mistrust. Early childhood, preschool, school age, adolescent, young adult, middle adulthood, and maturity. These are the stages of psychosocial development. The Erickson's theory, in its final version, he came up with age gap, which is infancy between 0 to 1 year, and the conflict here is the basic trust versus mistrust, and the virtue here, or the resolution here, is the hope that the child develop here. The culmination in old age is the appreciation of interdependence and relatedness. Then we have early childhood, which is 1 to 3 years. The conflict here is the autonomy versus shame, and the resolution or virtue is the will, and the culmination in old age is the acceptance of the cycle of life from integration to disintegration. Then the play age, which is 3 to 6 years, where the conflict here is the initiative versus guilt, and the resolution or virtue is the purpose, and the culmination in old age here, you find the humor, the empathy, and resilience. Then the school-going age, which is between 6 to 12 years, you find the conflict is the industry versus inferiority, and the resolution of virtue is the competence, and the culmination in old age in this preschool age is the humility, acceptance of the course of one's life, and unfulfilled hopes. Then the adolescent, 12 to 19 years, the conflict here is the identity versus confusion, and the resolution of virtue is the fidelity, and culmination in old age here is the sense of complexity of life, merging of sensory, logical, and aesthetic perception. Then we have the early adulthood, which is 20 to 25 years, and the conflict here is the intimacy versus isolation, and resolution of virtue is love, and the culmination in old age is the sense of the complexity of relationships, value of tenderness, and loving freely. Then we have adulthood, which is between 26 years to 64 years, and the conflict here is generativity versus stagnation, and the resolution of virtue here is the care. And the culmination in old age is caritas, caring for others, and agape, empathy, and concern. And the final stage here is the old age, which is 65 years to death, and the conflict is integrity versus despair, and the resolution of virtue here is the wisdom. And resolution in old age is the existential identity, a sense of integrity strong enough to withstand physical disintegration. And so we continue in the next class of psychosocial development according to Sigmund Freud. The psychoanalytic theories, Sigmund Freud's theory of personality. Sigmund Freud of personality. Bibliography, the biographical sketch. Sigmund Freud, 1856 to 1939. He was the first child of his father's second wife. He hailed from a poor he hailed from a poor background, and as a Jew, he was racially discriminated, and he had a very strict father. He had childhood problems, and he realized he had intense hostility towards his father. He recalls having sexual feeling for his mother, who was attractive, loving, and corrective. In his early 40s, he had numerous psychosomatic disorders. To trace the cause was difficult and seemed not to respond to Medicare. Their family left the original state of birth to settle in Vienna, Austria. This is the place he ever lived until his death in 1939. His personality theory is the first systematic theory of personality known in human history. He is hence the pioneer theorist of personality. His thinking has influenced many modern personality theorists. Many have come to being to extend his original formulations. Others only close the gaps denoted in his theory. He was a he was a psychiatrist by profession. His theory emerged from the clinical treatment of his patients. He called attention to psychodynamic factors that motivate behaviors, and Freud was the founder and remains the central figure of psychoanalytic psychotherapy. He was the first formalized methods of psychotherapy. Virtually every major system is to some degree a reaction to psychoanalysis as an extension of the model, while others modified its concepts and procedures. So Freud came up with this concept first, so others have been using it as a platform or a springboard where they either modify it or they do much research on it. The view of human nature, structure of personality. According to psychoanalytic view, personality consists of three interacting structures: the id, ego, and superego. Id is the biological component. It is the original system of personality at birth of a person. It is the stupid brain. It's the source of psychic energy. It is the source of instincts. The id consists and drives needs and wishes. The work of here in the id is where it is needs and wishes, lack of organization, it's blind to reality, demanding and insistent, it can't tolerate tension, it is ruled by the pleasure principle, it is illogical and driven to satisfying instinctual needs, it never matures, it is the child in an adult, it doesn't think, only wishes and acts. This it never thinks, it only wishes and acts according to what it wants. And we have said that it never develops. Then we have the ego. It is the psychosocial component. The ego is responsible for constraining the id. It operates on reality principle. Ego emerges in order to realistically meet the wishes and demands of the id in accordance with the outside world. It is the executive arm that curbs the id and maintains transaction with the external world in the interest of the fuller personality. It operates on reality principle, satisfies the id impulses in an appropriate way in the external world. Ego postpones the discharge of tension until the appropriate object to satisfy has been found. Ego is the faithful servant of the id and is responsible for cognitive functions such as problem solving and reasoning. Its job of handling threatening material is made easier by use of defense mechanisms. This is where, when the child finds that I need to cry and I attract their attention, it cries every time that child wants to attract their attention. So it develops a defense mechanism of itself. The characteristics of the ego. It has contact with external world of reality. It is what governs or controls and regulates the personality. It mediates between instincts and surrounding environment by giving instructions. It controls consciousness and exercises censorship. It formulates plans of action and is the seat of intelligence and rationality. It checks and controls the blind impulses of the id. Then we have the super ego. It is the social moral component. This is the judicial branch of personality. It includes a person's moral code. Characteristics here is that it has the aspects of good and bad, right and wrong in actions. It represents the ideal rather than the real. It doesn't strive for pleasure but for perfection. It represents the traditional values of society as they are handed down from parents to children. It inhibits id impulses. It persuades the ego to substitute moralistic goals for realistic ones and strive for perfection. So the super ego is the perfect person, is the judicial part, ama ndio ile hali ambayo inasema this is right and this is wrong, and it enforces the rules to be done there. Let's look at behavior motivation. Our behavior is determined by irrational forces, unconscious motivation, biological and instinctual drives, which include infertile wishes, desires, demands, and needs that remain hidden because of the conflict they can cause. Behavior is also motivated by psychodynamic factors. It is our past that drives us. Freud developed the concept of libido, that is sexual energy, and sexual means any form of pleasure. Freud excludes all pleasurable acts in his concepts of the life instincts. He sees the goal of life as genuine pleasure, as gaining pleasure and avoiding pain. What are the other motivational behaviors? We have conscious and unconscious. That is conscious and unconscious. Freud's greatness contributions are the concept of the unconscious and the conscious. Freud proposes that the mind has three levels. That is the conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. The mind has three levels: the conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. In the conscious, thoughts are information that a person is currently aware of, is remembering. Thoughts are information that a person is currently aware of or is remembering. That is the conscious. Whatever you are aware of or whatever you remember. The preconscious is that thoughts or information that one can become aware of easily. Preconscious is where you can become aware of thoughts easily. Unconscious is, according to Freud says that at times it engages in actions of behavior, the origin of which he is not aware of. These are thoughts, motives, impulses, or desires that lie beyond a person's normal awareness, but that can be made available through psychoanalysis. The unconscious stores our primitive instinctual motives plus anxiety-laden memories and emotions that are prevented from entering the conscious mind. This is where, according to Freud, the unconscious is that you have things in you that you are not aware of, and that is when he even came up with the with Johari's window, where he talk of the conscious and the unconscious, and there are things that you don't know, but it is in you. But as time goes by, you become aware of it. Then part B is anxiety. Anxiety is a state of tension that motivates us to do something. It develops out of a conflict among the id, ego, and superego over control of the available psychic energy. And there are three kinds of anxiety. The reality anxiety, and in the reality anxiety, this is the where there is fear of danger from external world. The level of such anxieties is proportionate to the degree of real threat. The moral and neurotic anxiety. Both are evoked by threats to the balance of power within the person. They signal to the ego that unless appropriate measures are taken, the danger may increase until the ego is overthrown. Then we have neurotic anxiety. This is the fear that instincts will get out of hand and cause one to do something for which one will be punished. Moral anxiety is the fear of one's own conscience. People tend to feel guilty when they do something contrary to their moral code. When the ego can't control anxiety by rational and direct methods, it relies on unrealistic methods called defense mechanism. Defense mechanism. Let's look at defense mechanism. They can help the individual cope with anxiety and prevent the ego from being overwhelmed, i.e., they distort reality to protect the ego from anxiety caused by id impulses. Defense mechanisms are normal and of adaptive values, but they become pathological if they become a style of life to avoid facing reality. When you talk of pathological, we are saying that it can become a negative. It's something that can become of devalue, especially when you are doing something to escape reality. For example, when you find that somebody, when they fail to provide for the family, and when they are asked upon for provision, they become angry, they become violent, they become abusive, so that they cannot be asked of the commitment and the responsibility, then that is what we are saying it's pathological. But if it becomes something that is adaptive, so as to do something positive, then it is good. The degree of anxiety determines the amount of defenses. Defense mechanisms have two common characteristics. One, they deny or distort reality. Two, they operate on the unconscious level. Defense mechanisms include: one, repression. Unacceptable or unpleasant impulses are pushed back into the unconscious, blocking a wish or desire from conscious experiences, e.g., forgetting early childhood sexual abuse. That is repression. Then we have regression. Regression involves using behavior from earlier stages of development of deal with anxiety, e.g., throwing a temper tantrum when a friend doesn't want to do what you like. So regression ni ile hali ya kukasirika wakati watu wanafanya venye wewe hutaki. Unajua kuna wakati wewe unataka watu wafanye vitu fulani na hawataki kufanya hivyo, wakati huo unakuwa na ile regression, ile hasira, unataka kukaa na wao tena because they don't do what you want them to do. Then we have displacement. This is the progress of redirecting the unwanted feeling onto a less threatening person. E.g., after being criticized by your boss, you yell at a co-worker. Yaani ile ukiwa umekasirishwa kazini, ukienda nyumbani unapiga mke wako, ama unamkasirikia, ama unakasirikia kila mtu. Ulikasirikiana na rafiki yako, na kwa sababu umwezi unaenda unachukua mtoto unamtandika. Hii ni ile hali ambapo mke wamekosana na husband, na kwa sababu hawezi mjibisha mume wake na hawezi mpiga, ana turn the attention to the child, anapiga mtoto. Ama saa zingine mtu anataka kukasirisha, anafanya kitu yenye utauliza swali. So unakuta mama anaenda anatandika mtoto kofi, ndio mzee aulize umefanyia nini mtoto, alafu sasa amwage ile mambo yote alikuwa nayo juu ya ndani hapo, ndio utamjua yeye ni nani. Then we have rationalization. Socially acceptable reasons are substituted for thoughts or actions based on unacceptable motives. It also means dealing with an emotion intellectually to avoid emotional concern. E.g., everybody else does it, so I don't have to be guilty. Hapa ni mahali ambapo unapata mtu anafanya kitu kwa sababu kila mtu anafanya. For example, unasikia siku hizi vile wasichana wanasema ya kwamba you hear girls saying nowadays that there is no virgin girls. Therefore, each girl anajaribu kutafuta boyfriend hata ya experience hiyo hali, kwa sababu wanasema hakuna msichana ambaye anaweza patikana akiwa bikira. So you are doing something and you rationalize with it. It could be something very wrong, but you want to debate upon it that everybody else is doing it. If it is corruption, you find that because everybody else is giving out money so that they can get something, you are also looking for it so as to give so that you can be, and you are saying that everybody else is giving out money. Therefore, you've got to do what others are doing if you want to be like that. Somebody else anasema ya kwamba if you want, you've heard of people saying that in this organization, in order for you to be promoted as a lady, you need to sleep around with the boss. And therefore, when you come, others are telling you, if you want to be promoted, do the needful. Do what everybody else is doing to get there. So, this is what we are calling rationalization. Then we have denial. Denial occurs when a person simply refuses to acknowledge the existence of an anxiety-producing piece of information. That is, refusing to believe the reality. E.g., alcoholics refusing to admit their addiction. You find that somebody is an alcoholic. Mtu ni mlevi lakini anakataa sema mimi si mlevi, hata nikikunywa mimi sikuangi mbaya, mimi nakuwa sawa, hata nikionja mimi naonjaga tu, mimi najua kujicontrol, mimi nakunyonga tu 3 na kwenda nyumbani. Mtu ni addicted to cigarette. lakini they never agree that they are addicted. Yeye aonage kwamba akona shida. Then we have projection. Projection involves protecting oneself by attributing unwanted impulses and feelings to someone else, e.g. blaming another for your action. Hiyo ndio tunaita projection. Wakati umefanya makosa, ukiulizwa unasema si ni nani alinifanya. Yaani una kila wakati unaikaka blame on someone else or on something. Hiyo ndio tunaita projection. That is projecting your anger towards others or your feelings towards others. Then we have sublimation, the diversion of unwanted impulses to socially acceptable behaviors, e.g. rechanneling sexual desires into art, music, sports, hobbies. Hapa ndio mahali wakati ambapo mtu akona kitu ambayo iko ndani yake yenye inamsumbua, lakini anaamua ku divert that attention to something else. Then we have reaction formation. This is refusing to acknowledge unacceptable urges, thoughts, or feelings by exaggerating the opposite state, e.g. being domineering, loud and boastful when you feel inferior and are low in esteem. So this reaction formation ni mahali ambapo napata kwamba mtu ako na nguvu, ako na power, pengine ako na pesa, na hiyo kiburi, anapata hiyo kiburi. Sasa hiyo kiburi anataka kupeleka kwa watu wengine ambaye ni kama hawana, ama anataka kucompete, anataka kuonekana ya kwamba ajulikane who is who. Then we have intellectualization. This is reducing anxiety by reacting to emotional situations in a detached and emotional way. Reducing anxiety by reacting to emotional situations in a detached and emotional way. Hapa ni mahali ambapo kitu inafanyika, lakini sasa wewe unatumia sasa akili, unatumia uwerevu, unajaribu kuto project your emotions. Then we have compensation. This is reacting to a personal deficiency by developing another talent. So compensation ni mahali ambapo kuna kitu fulani ambayo unakosa, lakini unajaribu compensate hiyo, unajaribu kufanya kitu kingine ili ureplace hiyo. Wewe hausumbuki. Pengine for example ni katika kucheza chess. You are not good at playing chess, lakini kwa sababu hutaki iwe ikuumize, unatafuta kitu kingine ambayo you are good at na unaifanya. Inaitwa compensation. Freud is known for his psychosocial stages of personality development. His position is that personality emerges as each child passes through these stages that start in infancy and end in adolescence. His personality development involves successful instinctual gratification that depends on the appropriate stimulation of corresponding areas of the bodily focus on in each stage. In each stage, what really matters that give rise of personality formation is the child's impulses or sexual drives. The stages include anal stage, 0 to 2 years. Here, the primary source of pleasure or tension reduction is the mouth, as we said, and the child lives and loves with the mouth and derives a lot of pleasure sensation in doing this through sucking, biting, and swallowing that he or she engages in at this time. Children who overindulge their needs at this stage turn into oral personalities later on and develop oral character problems as a result. As we say that this person's problem that will come as an oral character, as we say, is smoking, biting the fingers, and so on. They become over optimistic in life, over dependent on people, always expect to receive rather than to give. They tend to envy others for their success. So people who lack in this stage, wanapokuwa hawa watoto wanadepend na watu, hawataki kufanya kazi, and I think it is this generation that we are nowadays. Hawataki any responsibility, they don't want any commitment. Wow, they are over dependent. The second stage that we said is anal stage, 2 to 3 years. Here, child begins to be aware of pressure on the anal area as a source of discomfort. It is the stage of toilet training, bringing the first major conflict between parents and child. If the parents are excessive harsh, the child may turn to retaining and over time develop an anal retention behavior. It is characterized by being stingy and abstinent. This character can also be very orderly in orientation, very meticulous in cleanliness, and also very cruel. If the relationship is relaxed and the child is praised for the effort, the basis is laid for a creative, productive adulthood. Phallic stage 4 to 5 years, as we said, the focus of pleasure shifts from the anals to genitals. During this period, the boy identifies with his penis and manifests intense interest in his genitals. Sexual fantasies and curiosity about sex increases during this time, and the threat of castration becomes frightfully real when boys discover that girls do not have the sexual organs, that is the male sexual organs. Girls feel deprived and envious when they become aware that they do not have the male sexual organs. A prominent feature of the phallic stage for both sexes is the Oedipus complex, which presupposes that a child is drawn erotically to the parent of the opposite sex. The child experiences angry impulses and wishes towards the parent of the same sex. The boys see his father as a rival for the affection of his mother, and this develops a sense of castration syndrome. Girls may relate to the father as a rival for their mother's affections, which is known as the Electra complex. As the feelings towards the father intensify, the little girl fantasizes about having penis like her father and about removing her mother as a rival. Soon, the desire have a penis gives way to the desire to have a child by the father. Inappropriate resolutions of the developmental conflict of this stage give rises to the emergency of the kind of people Freud refers to as phallic characters or personalities. And this stage where we are talking of the electoral complex is whereby you find that if boundaries are not well put in place, you find the father sleeping with the girl and the mother sleeping with the boy. The tendency of phallic characters who are men is the need to prove that they are real men. They do this by trying to overwhelm women in sexual matters. Kuna wale watu ambao wanakuwa na hii shida ambayo wakati wako na wanawake wanataka kurule wanawake, wanataka kuonyesha wanawake ya kwamba sio watu, sio kitu, they don't deserve anything, and therefore they want to prove themselves as real men. They do this by trying to overwhelm women in sexual matters. In women, the primary orientation is penis envy, and they show this continuously striving for men, flirty. So wale wanawake ambao unaona wanaendaga wakiwa wamevaa tu, wanavaa manguo za kujiachilia, manguo za kujidisplay, za kuonyesha mwili wao, ni kwa sababu wao the primary orientation is penis envy, kutamani. Sasa wanataka tu kuonyesha their sexual bodies, their sexual parts. Ndio unaona wanatembea wakiachilia tumbo ikiwa wazi, wakiachilia hii sehemu ya nyonyo inaonekana, wanavaa manguo ambaye ni mafupi, manguo ambazo zina display their uchi. Then we have latency stage 6 to 10 years. After the torment of sexual impulses of preceding years, this period is relatively dormant. Sexual interests are replaced by interest in school, playmates, sports, and range of new activities. This is a time of socialization as child turns outward and forms relationships with others. The latency period lasts until puberty, and genital stage from age 21. This is the final stage in human personality development. Little or no problem is encountered at this stage if all the former stages have gone on smoothly. In that case, the individual may be able to lead a non-neurotic lifestyle or normal mature lifestyle without any complexes. Such a person is endowed with the capacities for normal heterosexual relationships and so has no need for psychiatric or counseling attention in later life. People who have reached this stage without any problems are referred to as genital characters or mature personalities. Genital personalities, according to Freud, are therefore healthy personalities. Let's look at psychology, psychopathology. We want to look now at psychopathology. Psychopathology. And this is the Freud maladjustment in human personality, which can come through one, fixation phenomenon. Fixation phenomenon involves carrying over into adulthood life patterns that were useful and reasonable at earlier stages in life, e.g., men and their cars. Hii ni ile hali, fixation phenomenon ni ile hali ambapo kuna stage kwa maisha ulikosa kufanya mambo fulani, unapokuwa mkubwa unataka kufanya. Sijui kama umeona mtu akiwa mdogo hakutengeneza zile baiskeli za watoto, zile za miti. Alafu wakati anakuwa mtu mkubwa akinunua baiskeli, anaweka mataa kila mahali. Anajaza mataa mpaka kwa miguu, anajaza mataa kila mahali, anaipamba kama ya mtoto mdogo. Kwa sababu alikosa, unapata amejaza rasta colors everywhere because there is something they missed in life. Unapata huyu mtu hakucheza ile mchezo, ile mpira ya karatasi. Sasa wakati anakuwa mtu mzima, unapata katikati ya watoto anacheza mpira na wao. Ama unapata kama ni mama akiwa mdogo hawakuruka ile kamba. Sasa wakati amekuwa mtu mzima ndio unapata kwa katikati ya watoto wadogo anajifanya anafunza watoto, lakini anataka kucheza na watoto, anataka compensate. Hii inaitwa fixation phenomenon. Then we have inadequate superego functions. This is characterized by very high standards and ideals, excessive guilt, etc. So inadequate superego functions ni mahali ambapo unapata mtu alikuwa kwa group ambaye walikuwa wanamdharau, walikuwa wanamuona hawezi, alafu anaenda mahali ambapo anakaa kama yeye ndio kabisa kabisa. I don't know whether you have seen someone who has come from sharks na alipokuja huku anakuwa yani anafeel kwamba kuna vitu amekosa. Alafu in the process akikaa katikati ya watu wanataka kufanya vitu, overdo things. Anaporudi kule nyumbani sasa yeye anataka kuwa master kwa wale wengine kuliko vile alikuwa. Then we have inadequate or weak ego functions, then overuse of ego defense mechanisms. Then we have techniques of healing. Freud approach to bring psychological healing to people in distress is through psychoanalysis, which involves encouraging free association, in-depth analysis of the past history of the individual in order to search for the problem of origin, dream analysis, interpretation of transference phenomenon, making of the repressed material conscious, exploring slips of tongue. When we talk of transference and counter-transference, is a condition whereby you project your issues towards someone. For example, you are in a session and you are let's say you are a man counselor in that session, and then a woman comes there, a counselee, a female client comes there, the opposite of you, anapokuja pale anaanza kuongea issues, alafu hizi issues unaanza kurelate na kile ambacho unapitia. Sasa unaanza kurelate na yeye so ile issues zako. Na counter transference ni mahali ambapo the client anakuja, alafu yeye anakuja, anakuona unafanana na mtu fulani ambaye ndio amesababisha machungu yake. The dream analysis ni mahali sasa unapata mtu anashindaga tu akiota ndoto. Na shida kubwa sana ni upate huyu mtu alikosa hiyo hali ambayo sasa anakuwa hii dream analysis, alafu anakuwa ni mhuduma, ni mhubiri. Sasa yeye kila kitu anataka ndoto na anakuja anaambia watu roho amesema. The dream analysis. Kila kitu ambacho anaota inakuwa anataka kuanalyze kenye ameota. The personality psychotherapy or therapeutic intervention. Genital characters are the true reflection of a mature personality. It is characterized by an individual who has negotiated all the preceding stages of development effectively. So, personality psychotherapy or therapeutic intervention, Nimali genital characters are the true reflection of mature personality, where all the stages already zilipitiwa jinsi inavyostahili. We are still continuing with theories of human development. Now we want to look at the next father of psychology. And we want to look at Jean Piaget's cognitive theory. Jean Piaget's cognitive theory. Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development suggests that children move through 4 different stages of mental development. And his theory focuses helps us understand how children acquire knowledge. And the 4 stages are as follows. 1, sensory motor stage, which is birth to 2 years. 2, pre-operational stage, that is 2 to 7 years. And 3, concrete operational stage, that is between 7 to 11 years. And the last one is formal operational stage, that is 12 years and above. The sensorimotor stage, which is birth to 2 years, and characteristic of this stage is that infant begins to know the world through their movements and sensations. When they see something moving, they follow it, and this is where a parent realizes that the child sees. And this is the stage when a child doesn't see any movement. You see them saying that the child is born blind. So this is where they begin to know the world through their movements and also through the sensations. They learn about the world through basic actions such as sucking, grasping, looking, and listening. This is when there is a bang, a child anaruka, anashtuka, ama anaangalia, anaona vitu, ndio mtoto anaanza kuangalia vitu ambazo ziko kwa nyumba, anaanza kuidentify the facial expressions, anaanza kujua watu ambaye watu wao kwa nyumba, na wanaanza kujua wakiwa kwao, na hata wakienda ugenini wana identify, unaona hapa ni tofauti. Infants learn that things continue to exist even though they cannot be seen. This is referred to as object permanence. They realize that their actions can cause things to happen in the world around them. And that's why when they realize that they can scream and people come quickly, wanaanza kujua kutoka hiyo wakati kwamba nikilia tu watu wanakuja na wanaapia wakati watu wamepotea. Then we have the second stage, which is sensorimotor stage, birth to 2 years. Or we are still continuing with sensorimotor stage. Say during this early stage of cognitive development, infants and toddlers acquire knowledge through sensory experiments and manipulating objects. A child's entire experience at the earliest period of this stage occurs through basic reflexes, senses, and motor responses. It is during the sensorimotor stage that children go through a period of dramatic growth and learning. As they interact with the environment, they are continually making new discoveries about how the world works. The pre-operational stage, ages 2 to 7 years. The characteristics here is that children begin to think symbolically and learn to use words and pictures to represent objects. They egocentric and struggle to see things from the perspective of others. Despite the fact that they are getting better with language and thinking, they still tend to think about things in very concrete terms. Concrete thinking is a literal form of thinking that focuses on the physical world. Then we have pre-operational stage where we have said it is between 2 to 7 years, and we have said that at this stage children learn through pretend play but still struggle with logic and taking the point of view of other people. They also often struggle with understanding the idea of constancy. For example, a teacher may divide a lump of clay into two equal pieces and then give a child the choice between two pieces of clay to play with. One piece of clay is rolled into a compact ball, while the other is smashed into a flat pancake shape. Since the flat shape looks larger, the pre-operational child will likely choose that piece, even though the two pieces are exactly the same size. Then we have the concrete operational stage, that is ages 7 to 11 years. Characteristics is that during this stage, children begin to thinking logically about concrete events. They begin to understand the concrete of conversation, that the amount of liquid in a short, wide cup is equal to that in a tall, skinny glass, for example. Their thinking becomes more logical and organized, but still very concrete. Children begin using inductive logic or reasoning from specific information to a general principle. For example, during the Christmas season, it rains, therefore, Christmas will bring a rain. During this stage, children also become less egocentric and begin to think about how other people might think and feel. They also begin to understand that their thoughts are unique to them and that not everyone else necessarily shares their thoughts, feelings, and opinions. The formal operational stage ages, which is 12 and up, the characteristics is that at this stage, the adolescent or young adults begin to think abstractly and reason about hypothetical problems. Abstract thought emerges as teens begin to think more about moral, philosophical, ethical, social, and political issues that require theoretical and abstract reasoning. They begin to use deductive logic or reasoning from a general perspective, a principle to specific information. Then we have formal operational stage, examples of destructive reasoning. In mathematics, if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A is equal to C. Since all humans are mortal and I am a human, then I am mortal. All dolphins are mammals. All mammals have kidneys. Therefore, all dolphins have kidneys. Since all squares are rectangles and all rectangles are four sides, so all squares are four sides. All birds have feathers, and robins are birds, so robins have feathers. This is the thinking. So if we compare these four stages, the sensorimotor stage birth to 2 years, and pre-operational stage 2 to 7 years, concrete operational stages 7 to 11 years, and formal operational stages which is 11 years and over, you find that in the sensorimotor stage, we have the main achievement during this stage, as we said, is object permanence, and this is that knowing that objects still exist even if it is hidden. It requires the ability to form a mental representation, i.e., a schema of the object. And in the pre-operational stage, as we said, that during this stage, young children are able to think about things symbolically, and this is the ability to make one thing, a word or an object, stand for something other than itself. Thinking here is still egocentric, and the infant has difficulty taking the viewpoint of others. Then we have the concrete operational stages, that is 11 years, 7 to 11 years, and we say that Piaget considered the concrete stage a major turning point in the child's cognitive development because it marks the beginning of logical or operational thoughts. This means the child can work things out internally in their head rather than physically try things out in the real world. Children can converse number 86, mass 87, and weight 89. Conversation is the understanding that something says Conservation is the understanding that something stays the same in quantity even though its appearance changes. Then we have the formal operational stage, which is 11 years and older, where the formal operational stage begins at approximately age 11 and lasts into adulthood. During this time, people develop the ability to think about abstract concrete concepts and logically test hypotheses. So, what is the educational implications of Jean Piaget's theory? Is that Piaget's 1952 did not explicitly relate his theory to education, although later researchers have explained how feathers of Piaget's theory can be applied to teaching and learning. Piaget has been extremely influential in developing educational policy and teaching practice. For example, a review of primary education by the UK government in 1966 was based thoroughly on Piaget's theory. The result of this review led to the publication of the Knowledge Report 1967. Discovery learning. The idea that children learn best through doing and actively exploring was seen as central to the transformation of the primary school curriculum. The report's recurring themes are individual learning, flexibility in the curriculum, the centrality of play in children's learning, the use of the environment, learning by discovery, and the importance of the evaluation of child's progress. Teachers should not assume that only what is measurable is valuable. Because Piaget's theory is based upon biological maturation and stages, the notion of readiness is important. Readiness concerns when certain information or concepts should be taught. According to Piaget's theory, children should not be taught certain concepts until they have reached the appropriate stage of cognitive development. And that's why you find that even the education system nowadays is so much focused on the time when the child is about 4 years of age, where they can go to school, and they say that during that particular period is when now the child can learn. This is Piaget's theory, that is in a Piaget theory in practice. According to Piaget's 1958, assimilation and accommodation requires an active learner, not a passive one, because problem-solving skills cannot be taught; they must be discovered. Within the let's look at within the classroom, learning should be student-centered, accomplished through active theory learning. The role of the teacher is to facilitate learning rather than direct tuition. Therefore, teachers should encourage the following within the classroom: focus on the process of learning rather than the end product of it. Using active methods that require discovering or reconstructing truth. Using collaborative as well as individual activities so children can learn from each other. Evaluate the level of the child's development so suitable tasks can be set. Important concepts. We have schemas. A schema describes both the mental and physical actions involved in understanding and knowing. Schemas are categories of knowledge that help us to interpret and understand the world. In Piaget's view, a schema includes both a category of knowledge and the process of obtaining that knowledge. As experiences happen, this new information is used to modify and add to modify, add to, or change previously existing schemas. Important, these schemas, for example, a child may have a schema about a type of animal, such as a dog. If the child's only experience has been with small dogs, a child might believe that all dogs are small, furry, and have four legs. Suppose then that the child encounters an enormous dog. The child will take in this new information, modifying the previously existing schema to include this new observation. It's like the child who has been in town and they goes to shacks and they've never seen a goat. They are only used to the dog. And when they get there, they see a goat eating grass. Then they say, mbwa wa huku inakula nyasi, because they have not come into contact with it. But the moment they realize that there's this different animal, then they try to digest, to integrate the knowledge that they have so acquired. Then we have accommodation. Another part of adaptation involves changing or altering our existing schemas in light of new information, a process known as accommodation.